sister and 3 or 4 years younger. But then the boys had noticed you, and I began to wonder, am I so blind, oh, not to see? I wish again that you would follow me. My friends began to call you, I should have paid attention. I thought you were a little girl, not old enough to mention. Had I been blind, oh, not to see, I wish again that you would follow me. Now I've lost you forever, 'cause pride has kept me quiet. I should have asked for your love, but was too proud to try it. Yes, I was blind, oh, not to see. I wish again that you would follow me, run, run, run around. Follow me, run, run, run around. Follow me. I sat and watched 2 lovers say hello. They kissed and walked away from lonely me. They didn't want to share the love that's beating there with poor lonely Mr. Misery. I walked along the beach alone and blue. I turned to gaze across the empty sea. As memories drifted by, I had to stop and cry for poor lonely Mr. Misery. The story of my life is not worth reading, for lonely is the only word you see. 3's a crowd when lovers get together, but I'm alone, so one's a crowd for me. I guess I'll move along where no one knows.
glass. You get caught before you see it. So open up your eyes. You got desire, so let it out. You got the power. Stand up and shout. Yes, sir. You got wings of steel, and it never really moves you. You only seem to crawl. You've been nailed to the wheel, but it never really turned. You know you got to wind up. You have desire, so let it out. You have the power. Stand up and shout. Shout out. You are the strongest chain, and you're not just some reflection, so never hide again. You are the driver, you're on the road. You are the fire, go on explode. You have desire, so let it out. You are the power. Stand up and shout. Stand up and shout! Hey! Stand up and shout! Hey! Stand up and shout! Hey! Yeah! Stand and shout! Let it out! Stand up and shout! 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 Shout it out! straight to his heart. Now, don't stand still. They'll get you right through your heart. All right. Right in your heart. All right. Thank you! Thank you! All right, thank you so much. It's been a long, long time. We've waited a long time to come to play for you. And here we are, and here you are. We love you. We'll give you a good show. You've already given us a good one. Thank you. We'd like to do for you another song from the album, Holy Diver. This one is called Shame on the Night. Listen. You stole in the day, snatched it away, but I've seen the sky, and I never, never, never want to die. Now you know the reason why I say, shame on the night. You don't care what you done, so I think I got to run. Shame on the sun. For light your soul, I the final sign. Oh, as the misty morning rolls away to die, reaching for the stars, we blind the sky. That it's over, but I don't know it's over now. And it just had to be. Yes, they say that it's all over. It's your lost children of the sea. That is over. Oh, yeah, yeah. And it just had to be. Well, they say it's over. 'Cause we're lost children of the sea. Yeah. The only time it's the misty morning rolls away to die, reaching for the stars, we blind the sky. Alright, oh, they say that it's over, but I don't believe it's true, no, no. And it just has to be. Well, they say it's over.
Bleeding brilliant you are. Thank you. All right. Give us some house lights, Tommy. Let me see these faces. Hey. Thank you. All right. As you can see, this show is being filmed tonight, so you're going to be all big stars, everybody here. But you deserve to be big stars. You're great. You're brilliant. Thank you. We could not have found a better place in all the world to do this. Thank you. We'd like to do it for you, another track from the album Holy Diver, but we shan't tell you what the name of this one is. You have a listen, have a look, and have a guess. And here it is. Go for it, mate.
Holy diver, you've been down too long in the midnight sea. Oh, what's becoming of me? Ride the tiger, you can see his stripes, but you know he's clean. Oh, don't you see what I mean? Gotta get away, holy diver. Yeah. Shiny diamonds, like the eyes of a captain of black and blue. Something is coming for you. Look out! Rest of the morning, you can hide in the sun till you see the light. Oh, we will pray it's alright. Gotta get away, get away. Between the velvet lines, there's a truth hard as steel, yeah. The vision never dies. It's a never-ending wheel, say. Holy diver, you're the star of the masquerade. No need to look so afraid. No. Jump for the tiger. You can feel his heart, you know he's free. Some light can never be seen. Wow! better make it well. Is your mind, you got your soul. Make the wrong move, you lost control.
sample. Yes! I love it. Good. Good. Well, it's on and on and on. It's on and on. It's stop. Give some lights, Tommy. All of you just standing in the front. Everyone sitting up in the back. Just you. You sing with me, all right? You be nice and quiet. We'll listen together. On and on it. You're ahead of me. You're way ahead of me. You're brilliant. Just up there again, right? And then you tell me what you think of up there. On and on it. I think it's quite good myself. What do you think? Now? Okay, just you then. Just you. On and on it. It's quite good, you know. Come on. You can do it. Here we go. On and on it. Yeah? Okay. Let's try it. Here we go. On and on it. All right, so you win, eh? Everyone together. On and on it. Yeah. On and on it. Oh, on and on it. All together, one big one. On and on it. Yeah! Lovely! Brilliant! Now we shall tell you the story about all this one. Star Swankies. Well, there's a big black shape looking up at me, yeah. Said, I'm where you ought to be. He said, come with me, and I'll give you desire. But first, you've got to burn in fire! Take you there, right? Get it down to hell. Then a little white shape looked down at me. He said, heaven is where you ought to be. He said, come with me, cause I know just what to do. But I said, go away, I'm gonna burn in hell with all of you, with all of you. Fade away. Fall into hell, fall into hell, fall into hell. Fade down, 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 down. On and on it. Oh, on and on it. Oh. Thank you. Hi, thank you. Thank you. You're brilliant, really. Thank you. Make our year, this does. Part of it. We'd like to do for you, actually, before we tell you what the song is, I shall introduce you to some of the people that you've not met yet. You've met two of the people in the band, but not one of the others, but we'll carry on from the get-go again. On the drums, say hello to Vinny Appice. Vinny! He's a wrecking machine. On the guitar, Vivian Campbell. Aye! Bloody good. And I and a friend of mine for a few years now, from a band called Rainbow, one time with me, Jimmy May! And we'd like to do for you a song that has nothing at all to do with the band that I just mentioned, but it has the word in the title, and the song is called Rainbow in the Dark. Is that? Thank you. Aye. Thank you. Thank you so much. Aye, really great. Thank you. We should like to do for you a final track, and it's from the Holy Diver album. Aye, from my friend out here. Where's my friend? There's my man. And you're my friend as well. Just for you, this song is called Don't Talk to Strangers.
Don't talk to strangers, 'cause they're only there to do you harm. Don't write in starlight, 'cause the words may come out real. Don't hide in doorways, you may find the key that opens up your soul. Don't go to heaven, 'cause it's really only hell. Don't smell the flower, they're an evil drug to make you lose your mind. Don't dream of women, 'cause they'll only bring you down. Yeah! Hey, you know me, you touch me, I'm real. I'm darkness, the one that lets you look and see and feel me. I'm danger, I'm a stranger. Say I'm darkness, I'm anger, I'm pain. I'm master, the evil song you sing inside your brain, drive you insane. Don't talk, don't let them inside your brain. No, no. Run away, girl. Yeah. No, no, don't let them in your mind. Protect yourself. Don't dance in darkness, you may stumble and you sure to fall. Don't write in starlight, 'cause the words may come out real.
don't you talk, talk, talk. No, don't talk. Don't talk. The stranger.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. I love being here. We'll see you again next year, without a doubt. Thank you.
You are about to enter the Shockwave Skull Sessions podcast. Heard exclusively on RoadrunnerRecords.com/Skull Sessions. And now, here is your host, Bob Nalbandian.
Yell the wind, though the wind won't help you flying up. Your back's to the wall. Change the sun, and it tears away to face you as you run, you run, you run.
That is, of course, the legendary Ronnie James Dio on vocals, fronting Black Sabbath, the song entitled Die Young. This is a tribute to the great Ronnie James Dio. We have lost one of the most incredible vocalists of our time, and as far as I'm concerned, the greatest vocalist that ever lived. So I'm going to dedicate this entire episode to the legacy of the great Ronnie James Dio. And seeing that most of my listeners are fans that have followed Ronnie James Dio from as early as Rainbow or even the Elf days. So I thought I'd do something a little bit different rather than just featuring guests that were involved with Dio during the Dio solo era, which many of the other tributes have done. I've, of course, dug deep and got the great Craig Gruber, the original Rainbow bassist and one of the original members of the band Elf, involved in this podcast, as well as returning guest, the great Bob Daisley, who, of course, was also in Rainbow during one of Rainbow's greatest periods, as far as I'm concerned, during the Long Live Rock and Roll era. He toured with Dio with Rainbow for a couple years up until Rainbow changed lineups and got to Graham Bonnet in the band. So we've got both Craig Gruber and Bob Daisley going to share some great stories and memories about Ronnie James Dio, as well as talk about the early Rainbow days. So we're going to go ahead and get right into it. But first off, I want to thank all you guys that have sent out donations for the Skull Sessions. Very, very much appreciated. I got some incredible feedback from the last podcast where I had asked for donations to keep the Skull Sessions running on a regular basis, and I got some very, very generous contributions from you fans out there, and I do appreciate it. Keep those contributions coming, and we will keep the Skull Sessions going. I've already got 2 or 3 great episodes in the can that you are absolutely going to love. So we are going to keep the Skull Sessions going regularly. Thanks to you guys and your contributions. If you do want to contribute and you have a PayPal account, you could send donations to my PayPal email address is shockwaveskullsessions@gmail.com. So you could donate there through PayPal. You could also reach me at that email address if you want to send any comments. And once again, feel free to send those contributions. And better yet, guys, if you want to donate, there's some great causes that you could donate to that will be in the great memory of Ronnie James Dio. You could go to Ronnie James Dio's homepage at ronniejamesdio.com And there are some links to some cancer funds you could donate to. Also, as Craig Gruber explains a little bit later, he's got a Dio tribute band that's going to be going out on tour, him and Craig Goldie and Frankie Bonelli, and they've got a cancer charity set up too, which you could check out. Craig will be talking about that later in the podcast, so be sure to definitely donate to those causes. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and get right into it. This was done via phone just a few days after the passing of Ronnie James Dio. I, of course, wanted to give both Craig and Bob a few days to mourn the loss of their great friend. Speaking of which, man, it's been a very sad last couple of weeks for the rock and roll community, of course, with the passing of the great Ronnie James Dio. And just recently, Slipknot bassist Paul Gray had passed away. And, of course, you know, Typo Negative vocalist frontman Peter Steele recently passed, as well as Debbie Abano, the great manager from the Bay Area who helped out several of the great Bay Area thrash bands, including Testament, Exodus, Death Angel, and many others. So it's been a sad last couple of weeks, so I just hope this trend does not continue. Let's just hope for the best, and all we could do is pay tribute to these great artists of the heavy metal community, and that's what we're doing here on this episode of the Shockwave Skull Sessions podcast. Shockwave Skull Sessions is heard exclusively on roadrunnerrecords.com/skull sessions. You can also check it out on iTunes. All right, with that said, without further ado, let's get right into this great conversation with Bob Daisley and Craig Gruber. Enjoy.
We got Bob Daisley and Craig Gruber here on the line. What's going on, guys?
Plenty.
Hello, Bob.
Well, I mean, the biggest, saddest news in the last couple of weeks is obviously Ronnie going. Apparently he was in pain towards the end, so, you know, it's only selfish to wish he was still here, you know, if he's in pain. So he's at peace now, and he's not in pain, and it's a sad day. It's horrible, you know. He's still a young man. I mean, 67 in this day and age is nothing. He had many years left in him, you know, that he could have been active, but I suppose we have to be grateful for all the years we did get out of him. He was a great singer and a very nice person.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's what we are doing this podcast on. This is a tribute to the great Ronnie James Dio. And I know there were, several tributes that have been done with Ronnie, several great tributes. We're going to talk about some of his early days, and I'm going to have both Bob Daisley and Craig Gruber share some great memories and some great stories about Ronnie. And I'm just going to kind of let them let loose and talk about, what a great, fantastic guy Ronnie James Dio was. We'll go ahead and start now. People that aren't familiar with Craig Gruber, Craig was the original bass player in both Rainbow and Elf. Well, actually, you came in on Elf's second record. Is that correct, Craig?
Yeah, in fact, Ronnie is from a small town called Cortland, New York, upstate New York, near Syracuse, and they had a band. He was in lots of groups up there, but he started out with Ronnie and the Red Caps, and that was back in like 1965. And then
was he singing then, or was he? I know he played bass for a while, didn't he?
Yeah, Ronnie was the bassist, and they reformed the band again, and they were called the Electric Elves. And actually, there was a band prior to that called Ronnie Dio and the Prophets. I guess I should bring that up.
Yeah,
I remember Ronnie talking about that. That was probably one that he mentioned most when he talked about old times was the Prophets.
Yeah, if you go on YouTube, you could actually hear some of that stuff. Some great early works from Ronnie.
Right.
Yeah,
we're talking late 60s.
He always modeled. He had such an incredible individual stylistic voice, as you know. I mean, I used to go see him play.
He played trumpet as well, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. In fact, he was a very good trumpet player in high school. Then picked up the bass guitar and obviously figured out he had an incredible voice. But
the thing is, if you look at him on stage live, he does sort of trumpet playing gestures as he's singing with the mic. And I used to notice that when I was on stage with him in Rainbow days. And if you look at films of him, every once in a while he'll do the little, trumpet playing fingers movement with the mic, or it sort of stayed with him a little bit.
Yeah, they formed another band. There was a tragic accident, unfortunately, with Ronnie Dio and the Prophets, and Nicky Panis, the original guitarist, was unfortunately killed in that accident. And Dave Feinstein, which is Ronnie's cousin, is obviously He's the guitarist in
David
he's the first guitarist in Elf.
Feinstein, the Rods.
Yeah, the Rock. He's in David Rock Feinstein, amazing guitarist, amazing person, very, very close to Ronnie all through the years. And he was the original second guitarist in Elf.
So with Elf and the Electric Elves, were they all small people like Ronnie? Because what was Ronnie, 5'3" or something?
Yeah, Ronnie's around 5'2", 5'3", right in there. Yeah. In fact, Rock, Dave Feinstein is the exact same height as Ronnie. I mean, they stand shoulder to shoulder together. They're both, smaller people. And then they had Mickie Lee Sule was their keyboard player, and Mickie Lee's about 5'5", and Gary Driscoll, the original drummer, Gary was like 5'7", but sitting down in the drum kit, he was about the height of the rest of them. Right. And I used to go see him play all over the place when I was, younger, 15 years old, and they were my idols,
Were they pretty big in the Cortland area? I mean, they must have been like big rock heroes, because Cortland's a pretty small town, right?
Yeah, it's like Cortland, New York is about 30,000 people. Oh, shit. And it's a melting pot. I mean, some amazing people came out of there, through the years. Like Mark Doyle, great guitarist, Joe Whiting, great vocalist, people from regional successful people.
So did they do much outside of Cortland, or were they more or less just confined to their hometown as far as working?
I guess you had Syracuse.
Working, they did the greater Northeast. Yeah, they did like New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania. They did like about a 5-state region, and they were booked out of New York City with Doug Thaler with ATI, Atlantic International. Doug Thaler.
Now I'm glad you bring that up, because I understand Doug Thaler was actually a guitar player in Elf, right? Was he the first replacement after David?
Yeah, he was in the band at the time of the accident, and it was Nicky Panis on guitar, Dave Feinstein, and Doug Thaler was the rhythm guitarist. Wow. And Doug was hurt pretty bad at the accident, literally hurt his hip and back and shoulders and whatnot, and was unable to play physically anymore. So he got into the management end of it and ended up, managing Motley Crue and Bon Jovi, and did very, very well. Doug's a sweetheart, too. Doug is just the sweetest guy you'd ever meet in your life. Very talented. Songwriter, too. Great songwriter.
So were you pretty close to Ronnie and the guys in Elf before you actually joined the band? You used to see them live quite a bit. How'd you actually meet up with them?
That's a really interesting story. I used to go see him play. I wasn't a bassist at the time because I didn't know how to tune the thing yet, but I was in love with the instrument. But, I used to go see him play at the Electric Elves. Actually, I saw Ronnie Dio and the Prophets before they became the Electric Elves. But, they played clubs, and I'd sneak in, and I was 15 years old or so and 16 years old, and I couldn't get into the bars because you had to be 18. But, they were legends. I mean, Ronnie Dio was absolute legend.
He still sang that way even back then?
Oh, my gosh, definitely, yeah. They used to do Beatles medleys, and anybody that's a musician, Bob and everybody I know, you don't touch a Beatles song, forget it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're not going to reproduce that. And they did a whole Beatles medley. They did an incredible Tommy medley. When Tommy came out, The Who, they did the entire album, like note for note, word for word, perfect. I mean, phenomenal. Yeah, Ronnie was an incredible vocalist.
So Ronnie would have been what then, about 20-something?
Yeah, he was in his, he was born in 42, so 52, 62. He's like middle 20s. Yeah, 22, 23, 24, right in there.
Now, Ronnie actually, he went by Ronnie Padavona then, right? It wasn't until the second
Ronald Padavona, yep.
And then in the second Elf album is when he changed his name to Ronnie James Dio, correct?
I think probably Roger Glover and Ian Pace, because they produced the first Elf album. They were instrumental in taking the band to another level, too, production-wise, and actually honing out, an image for them, too, And
the first version I was going to say the first version of Rainbow, because Elf had been touring with Purple when Rich was in Purple, and it seemed to me at the time that instead of Richie Blackmore forming a new band called Rainbow, it was almost like Richie joined Elf, wasn't it?
That was an interesting period, too, because Elf had been touring with Deep Purple since 1972 after the first album. And then there was a shake-up in the band after they got off tour, and that's when I joined the band. I was really very good friends with Gary Driscoll, and Gary Driscoll used to rehearse with another drummer friend of mine, an excellent drummer named Mark Nassif. And
I know Mark Nassif, yeah.
Very cool guy, incredible drummer. But they rehearsed together for 5 days a week. Religiously. And I was playing with Mark Nosif at the time, and Gary came in one day, and I was playing with Mark, and we were just hammering out some crazy stuff. And Gary Driscoll said, "Oh my God, where'd this guy come from?" And he was talking about me playing with Mark, and I didn't think I was anything special. He said, "Man, do you know who Ronnie James Dio is?" Or Ronnie Dio, and I said, "Of course. I've gone to see him since I'm old enough to walk." And he goes, "Well, we just got off a tour with Deep Purple," and I said, "I know. I followed you guys." And he goes, "Ronnie's thinking about putting the bass down and going up front, and we're looking for a bassist. We're looking for somebody that can hold down the bottom and would possibly, be a new member of Elf, and I'd really like Ronnie to see you."
And what year was that?
Years old. That was 73. That was the spring of 1973.
So during that whole time before that, Ronnie was singing and playing bass, correct?
Yeah, Ronnie played. Yeah, he had an EBO bass, and I mean, he memorized all the, the McCartney parts and any parts that there were, even the John Entwistle parts when they did the Who medleys. I mean, he played them note for note, and he could sing incredibly well and play incredible bass at the same time, plus play with Gary Driscoll, which was an incredible drummer too,
Now
that's a difficult thing to do,
right?
to play, nice bass lines and sing at the same time.
Yeah, Bob, you ever try it?
Oh,
I'm still trying.
It's something. Singing is not something I ever really enjoyed doing. I did it in Rainbow and did some parts with Ronnie in Rainbow, but it's not something I really enjoy.
It's really difficult to play the bass guitar and play melodic parts and sing at the same time. I mean, Paul McCartney mastered it. Paul McCartney
he was another great. Yeah, Jack Bruce was another one. He was good at it.
Mastered it, absolutely. And Geddy Lee, of course. Geddy Lee is an amazing bassist and vocalist.
Yeah.
So, Craig, obviously you toured with Elf when they toured with Deep Purple, opening up for Deep Purple. And this is, back when, around when Burn came out, and they were like at their prime. That must have been incredible. Tell us not only some of the stories, but some of the memories you had with not only Elf and Deep Purple, but in particular with Ronnie.
Yeah, that was an incredible part of my life. At 20 years old, for me to join a band like that and take the bass from Ronnie and try and do a good job, it was mind-boggling for me at the time. But I really took it seriously, and I was very honored and very proud to be part of that. But
how long had you been playing bass then?
I got a bass guitar when I was 15 years old. I played about 5 years, but luckily I ran into a jazz bassist that lived right down the block from me, and he showed me some pretty cool stuff. But if it wasn't for him, I'd probably been lost. But it just came natural to me. I mean, I got a book coming out next year too. It's called Stone Cold Crazy. So that's on Weimer Publishing. That whole story is going to be in there too. But back to the Deep Purple thing. I had never played in front of more than about 500 people max, and then all of a sudden we were rehearsing and writing the second Elf album, which is called Carolina County Ball, and all of a sudden they said, hey, we got a record deal with Purple Records is picking us up now, and so we rented out this tiny little barn in Cortland, New York, no heat, that kind of thing, and hammered out about 8 or 10 songs, but we always wrote together. Back to Ronnie, we always wrote together. Ronnie was literally the catalyst when it came to writing, and him and Mickie Lee, the keyboard player. I don't want to overshadow Mickie because Mickie Lee is a genius, but him and Ronnie had a great connection. And one thing about Ronnie is still just a humble sweetheart of a person, very caring person, extremely intelligent, and keeping a band together isn't the easiest thing in the world either. And he managed to extract really good things from each and every one of us. And Gary Driscoll tended to want to overplay a lot, and so did I. And Ronnie had to harness us back a little bit, and he was very kind about saying, and he wouldn't come out and slam me and say, well, that's a crazy part. What are you doing? Like, he would suggest things. He was like a mentor.
Well, Ronnie was always very diplomatic, wasn't he? He cared about people's feelings and what he said, how it affected people and things like that. Because I remember when I first joined Rainbow, it was out of anyone, it was Ronnie who sort of, because I was the new kid, he took me under his wing, and he almost sort of not protective, but very considerate and a nice bloke. Yeah. So what happened with you with Rainbow?
That was a mix-up of a kind of a situation there. I was in and out of the band a couple of times.
But when I joined Rainbow, I thought the only bass player they had, because I didn't know any about any of that. I thought that Jimmy Bain had been the bass player. I knew they'd had Mark Clark for a little while, but I thought Jimmy Bain had been the original person. But so what happened with you that you didn't stay?
On the first album, we literally wrote that album, on the road because, Deep Purple was ending and Richie was extremely unhappy, unfortunately, with the band setup, with Dave Coverdale. And Coverdale's an incredible vocalist, one of the greatest ever, sweetheart of a guy, too, as you know. And Glenn Hughes is a monster vocalist and monster bassist, but Purple wasn't going in the direction he wanted. So, I mean, we did the
Well, it was getting away
tour
from rock and becoming a Stevie Wonder band, wasn't it? I know that's what Richie really didn't like. He didn't want funk and soul and all that.
If you played any kind of funk part, you were done.
Yeah, and Glenn Hughes was very into that, so it was...
Definitely.
Glenn's
R&B bass
So what was that, 74 or 75?
That was 73, in fact. 73, we did the Burn Tour. 74, the Stormbringer album. Remember the Stormbringer album came out? They did two albums. Yeah. So we did both world tours with them in America, Europe, England, British Isles, Canada. Did about 150 dates. Richie was very unhappy with the band, and there was a lot of tension backstage. And Ronnie and I, we all shared this one dressing room as Elf. I mean, we didn't have a lot of space, and of course, Purple's gear was set up, on the large stage, and our gear was set up right in front of them. So we only had about 15 feet. If you took like 3 steps forward, you were in the first row. I mean, you fell off the stage. It was kind of comical. But Ronnie, the band developed. I mean, Elf developed. We had a lot of pressure on us. I mean, you go out in front of Deep Purple every night. You better sound good, and you better look good, and you better have your act together. You're not there. But the band really became a solid unit, Elf did, and it was all because, again, Ronnie's input in the writing capabilities and so forth, and the melodies that he wrote. And then the third album we did was Trying to Burn the Sun, and the band came to another level again, Elf did, and that's a great album. And Roger produced that one too, Roger Glover. We went to England for about a year and did that album in Kingsway Recorders and Air Studios. But back to the Deep Purple thing. I know this conversation could take a few months, but I'll try and capsulize it. Ronnie and Richie were starting to get along very well during the Stormbringer tour because Richie hardly ever hung out with Purple. So he was hanging out with us guys. And Richie always carried around this like $50 Fender acoustic guitar with nylon strings on it. I mean, literally, there was no case. He just dragged it around on the plane, and he was always playing. Richie played constantly. So Ronnie and him and I were just doodling one night and one afternoon backstage, and this riff came up, and it's like, wow, Richie constantly was playing like medieval kind of dissonant kind of chords and scales and whatnot. But him and Ronnie came up with this riff, and it ended up being, the song is 16th Century Greensleeves, which was actually the first song that we ever wrote. And we tapped it out backstage, and we had a day off on the Stormbringer tour. We were in Milwaukee, I remember, and Colin Hart, our road manager, came to our hotel door and said, "Hey, we're going to the studio today." We went, "Huh? What are you talking about?" And he goes, "Yeah, just get up, get dressed, and we'll have a car pick you guys up. We've rented a studio here. We're going to go in and knock out some material." I went, "Huh?" So we never did that. Anyway, about an hour later, we end up in this little tiny, like $50 studio, right, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Richie was there, Ronnie was there, and Elf. And Richie comes in and says, Greg, we've got this song that, Ronnie and I have been working on, and you've heard it. We worked it out in the backstage, and we're going to cut this song today, and Ronnie's got some lyrics. So here's the riff. And I always listen to Free. I love Free. That's one of my favorite bands in the world. Paul Rogers' Free.
Good band. Yeah.
He says, he's kind of goes, Free. The song Fire and Water, Craig. And I go, yeah, it's one of my favorite songs in the world at that time. Because it's kind of that push feel. Can you play something like that on the bass? I was like, sure. I love that stuff. But anyway, so we worked out the rhythm track. We probably were in a studio 3 hours total, and we completely cut and recorded 16th Century Greensleeves. And the only thing I heard about that song was, Richie's thinking about doing a solo album, and, we're just testing this out to see how it sounds. Well, that's really not the truth, because he was already thinking about leaving Purple at the time, and him and Ronnie had spoken and had been writing together. And
is this 74 or 75 now?
This is 74. We're still on tour with Deep Purple doing the Stormbringer tour.
Now,
And,
Ronnie had told me, I had interviewed him years ago, and he had said that when he actually recorded that, Richie didn't know anything that he wrote, the lyrics or anything. As you said, you guys hadn't rehearsed that song at all, 16th Century. He just came in the studio, and Richie just had him the first take. He said that was it.
Well, we originally did it, like I say, on tour. We actually wrote it on the road and recorded it in this crappy studio. And then they sent the tapes back to England during we were finishing the tour, and they sent it back to Martin Birch. Martin was in London, and Martin Birch mixed it and mastered it, and actually sent us a copy of it. Well, the tour ended in December of '74, and we had about a month and a half off. And Ronnie and Olive and Alf, we were still living in Cortland, New York, and taking a breather at the time. And Ronnie called a band meeting and said, the powers that be, and we've been discussing some things, and Richie's going to actually put together a solo album. He's left Deep Purple for good, and we're going to Los Angeles in about a month, and we're going to write and record the rest of the album.
So it was initially just going to be a solo record. It wasn't actually the band Rainbow. It was just a Richie Blackmore solo.
It wasn't. It was just going to be something for Richie to do, a vehicle to play the material that Deep Purple wouldn't play. There was certain material that they wouldn't record.
Is that the version that went on the first album, that the 16th Century Greensleeve?
Yep. If you listen to it, you can really, I can tell the difference. But if you listen to it carefully, it's such a compressed sound. Because we went to Musicland Studios in Munich, Germany, and did the whole Rainbow album.
I remember that.
But we used the original track. The original one we did in Milwaukee, 16th Century Greensleeves, is what's on the first Richie Blackmore's Rainbow album.
Wow.
Oh, so you didn't get credited for that?
Yeah, I played on the whole album. Yeah, my name's on the album. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Sure.
Richie decided, rather than, auditioning for players, he just basically recruited Elf. And at the time, I guess it was Steve Edwards that was on guitar, right? He had replaced David Feinstein. And
exactly.
How did that go down?
Yeah, that situation was, Elf hadn't completely broken up yet in early '75. We were, like I say, first of the year. The whole thing is we were going to California, just to Los Angeles, and record Richie's solo album. So they put Steve on retainer. They just put him on a salary, and just said, you hold on there for a few months, we'll be back. And because when Richie's album comes out, whatever, we're gonna go out and do some more dates as Elf. But the material started to come together really, really well. So initially we were rehearsing at SIR Studios in Hollywood. And then Richie rented this house way out in Oxnard, about 75 miles from Los Angeles, to get us out of the Hyatt house and the Rainbow and all that stuff, because we were killing ourselves with alcohol and 8 chicks an hour and all that kind of stuff. Welcome to the Riot house, and Anyway, that was a bad influence. I mean, Tommy Bolin was there with us, and and Glenn Hughes, and it was tough because all the Purple guys were there trying to wonder what the hell was going on, because they had all moved to Los Angeles too. So it was Deep Purple. It was Glenn Hughes, David Coverdale,
So
Casey.
they didn't actually know that Richie had this band.
No.
Wow.
No, they just, there was no, formal, decision made at that point. Richie just went off and did his thing, So it was odd running into those guys, because there was
Purple already got Tommy Bolin in the band, correct? At this point.
Well, they hadn't really done it yet. He was a very close friend of Glenn Hughes's, So Glenn and Tommy, you saw them together all the time in Hollywood, and you saw them when we'd go to the Rainbow just about every weekend, and we'd move into the Rainbow on a Friday night and find ourselves passed out on the floor Sunday morning and still there, but literally, or find ourselves. I woke up in John Mayall's house one day up in the Hollywood Hills. I had no shirt on. I had a pair of leather jeans, no shirt, one cowboy boot. My wallet was gone, and I had no money. I lived in Malibu. So here I am in John Mayall's house in the Hollywood Hills on a Sunday. There was bodies literally laying everywhere, half naked, shredded, just insane parties. They went on for, not exaggerating, they went on for a couple of days. I remember waking up one morning, and I was in Dave Coverdale's house. It was me, Dave Coverdale, Ava Cherry, this vocalist from David Bowie's band,
right.
Glenn Hughes, Tommy Bolin, and Billy Preston. And all of us were laying on sofas and chairs and on the floor. We were playing pool. We started on a Friday night. And Sunday morning we were still playing pool.
Now, Craig, did Ronnie partake in any of this, or was he back in those days?
Yeah, Ronnie was right there with us. Ronnie was more reserved. I mean, Ronnie, as far as drugs and that kind of stuff, Ronnie didn't go that route.
Right.
Ronnie liked bourbon and Coke.
Ronnie liked to drink
very much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ronnie and Jack Daniels and Ronnie and bourbon and Coke got along very well. And when we were on tour in England and Europe, he liked Scotch and Coke, like a single malt.
Right.
Like me, I don't drink much anymore. But
were you still in touch with Ronnie? Of late?
Yeah, we were still, emailing and whatnot. But he was always busy on the road, and I'm very close with David Feinstein. David and I chat often and email back and forth. And David's very, very close to Ronnie. And that's another thing that just absolutely this past week, obviously, it's the greatest loss of my life, other than parents and family members. I've known him for 38 years. I mean, when you meet somebody and we went through a lot together. I mean, with all those years in Elf and going through that with Deep Purple, and then forming Richie Blackmore's Rainbow, and then I joined again when Ronnie joined Sabbath in 1979.
When they were doing Heaven and Hell, right?
Yeah,
and that was basically Ronnie's doing, right? He brought you back into the fold. What was the story? Geezer didn't want to continue on without Ozzy, so you were kind of brought in. And I know you did a lot of the songwriting. I know you wrote Die Young.
I co-wrote a couple of things.
Yeah.
I did Die Young. I brought Die Young in. They needed an up-tempo song, and I was working at the record plant. I was kind of lived there moved in for about a year. I mean, I had a house, of course. I mean, I just was a session musician there. I was making serious money. I mean, I was, back then, $3,000 a week was good money, And I was going home every night, sleeping in my own bed.
So what happened to Geezer then? You were in Sabbath, and then Geezer just decided to come back, and then that was you gone?
I was, like I said, I was a session bass player at the record plant, and with Andy Johns. Andy Johns was the engineer there. He was my friend, so he brought me in. But Ronnie called me out of the blue. I mean, I hadn't been talking to him since Rainbow. I left Rainbow and then went back after they fired Mark Clark. I came back for about 4 months and then left again. So we hadn't spoken in about maybe a year. But the phone rings, and it's Ronnie, and I said, hey, how you doing? What's going on? I haven't talked to you in a while. And he goes, I just joined Sabbath. And I went, huh? Because Sabbath had, I think the last album they put out at that point was Technical Ecstasy, and didn't do well, and things were kind of slow. Things were going well for him.
Never Say Die, actually, yeah.
Yeah, it was not. Yeah, Never Say Die. Absolutely, you're right. But he said, listen, I just joined Sabbath a few months ago, and we're writing, and we've got some great material, Craig, and Geezer's gone. Of course, I replaced Ozzy, he said, and then when Ozzy left, Geezer decided it would probably be a good idea too. So he's up and gone, and I'm like going, huh? This sounds crazy, but he says, why don't you come on up and have a listen? And because I just can't think of anybody that could play the parts, that well enough, and it would be great to have a friend in the band too. And I said, well, now that you put it that way, but I didn't know what to expect, truthfully. But I know Ronnie's a genius, absolute genius, and just I loved him for so many years. And I said, all right, I'll have a listen.
Now, how were those writing sessions with Black Sabbath? Was it a lot different than with Rainbow?
It was exactly the same as Elf and Rainbow. Was exactly the same. Ronnie with an acoustic guitar. I had like a little tiny Ampeg combo amp, because we wrote very, very low volume, And Ronnie come up with some lyrics and usually a 3-chord sequence, something that resolved, right? Something that went up and down, and he came up with a melody. But Ronnie did most of the writing, and Tony is an incredible musician too, obviously, crazy and just amazing guitarist. And Bill Ward, great guy, amazing drummer, perfect, just a sweetheart of a person. But to answer your question, everything was done in low volume. I mean, low volume. We'd go to one of our, sounds crazy, but we always worked out in Ronnie's bedroom. I don't know why. He's once meet in my room tonight at 7:00, and we're gonna write some material, and we did. And then once we got 3 or 4 things done, it sounded pretty decent. And then we'd go out into the living room. We rented one of Barry Gibbs's houses, the guys from the Bee Gees.
Right.
So we were living in Bel Air for, I was with the band about 9 months. The band transferred from Bel Air, California to Miami, so we rented one of the Bee Gees houses right there in Biscayne Bay, huge place right on the ocean. And we wrote the rest of the album in Miami, and then we recorded it at Criteria Studios, 20 miles away. So, but the majority of the writing for the rest of Heaven and Hell was done in that house. And that's when the band actually came together. And we recorded the whole album. It was done. Absolutely done. The only thing that wasn't done
did you get your writing credit for that?
No, I did not.
So no writing credit, and did they keep your parts, your performances?
Good question. When I
Or
left,
did Geezer replace them?
yeah, Geezer went back in after he came back to the band, and they just pulled all the bass tracks out. And
So he
Geezer
replaced
went
what
in
you did, and then...
Yeah, he went in and re-recorded all the songs, and then they wrote Neon Nights, because we didn't write, Neon Nights wasn't done yet. We had all the songs except Neon Nights, and when the Heaven and Hell album came out, and I heard that song on there, I said, there's a new one, wow. But they used my song, Die Young, which is cool. And,
so you were there through the whole process of the whole writing of the record. Geezer wasn't a part of it.
No, the album, he wasn't. The album was done, and we all took about 2 weeks off, because we worked really, really hard for 9 months. The album was done.
So Geezer was gone for that long, for about 9 months?
Yeah, he was gone from like February or March until December of
And that's in what, 79?
And then, the album came out early 80.
Now, you didn't do any shows
we had
with... I'm sorry, I was just going to say, did you actually do any shows with Black Sabbath, or no?
No, we didn't. We just rehearsed, and then when the album was recorded, we took 2 weeks off, and that's when Geezer was in touch with Tony the whole time, because they'd been mates for 20 years at that time. And they played some of the mixes for him, and and they obviously had a chat, and then there was a band meeting, and they all sat me down and said, this is what's going on. We're talking, we're speaking with Geezer again, and he really, really loves what he's hearing, and he's thinking about coming back into the band. And I mean, how would you feel about that, Craig? And I said, truthfully, I think it's a great idea. I mean, it really isn't exactly what I was hoping for, but the bottom line is that the more original members you have of a unit that creates that cohesive unit is smart. I said, I think it's
the more credibility you have as well as the name band. I mean, if people start coming and going, it always loses credibility, doesn't it?
Absolutely, definitely.
One thing, Craig, did you actually tour with Rainbow? Because didn't Richie get the new lineup, the Rainbow Rising lineup, shortly after the recording of the first Rainbow album? Yeah, what happened, we recorded the album in Munich, in Germany, took us about 4 months, early 75, and then we came back to the States, and we were all living in New York. Richie had already had a place out in Oxnard, so Elf was still living in New York. I think it was May or June of 75. We all decided that the best thing to do would be to, move to California, move to Los Angeles. So we took Elf. The rest of the band we took was Ronnie, myself, Gary, Driscoll, the drummer, and Mickie Lee Sule, the original Rainbow. And we moved to Los Angeles, and we were looking for some houses. So we decided Malibu would be a nice spot. So we all went out there and found some houses right within a mile of each other. And Richie was still about 30 miles further out in Oxnard. We were rehearsing in Hollywood in SIR Studios off Gower, where everybody rehearses.
I know where SIR is, yeah.
Yeah. Lots of fun there. And funnily enough, this is really crazy because we were rehearsing in one of the Warner Brothers buildings, this movie studios, huge place. And, we're hearing Deep Purple, right, rehearsing. So, strangely enough, I know, Dave Coverdale, all of Deep Purple, and they had replaced
that was Tommy Bolin then, was that?
Yeah. So we're running into them.
So was Richie still on good terms with them, or did they have a fallout?
Nah, he wouldn't even look, he just shut the door, one of those, and just, rolled his eyes.
But you guys were still pretty close with Purple, right?
Absolutely. Oh, my God. Yeah, we got along. Everybody got along great. I mean, we were just 72, 73, 74. I mean, there's 3 years straight, with Purple.
Were you actually,
everywhere they went, we went.
Were you actually touring on the jet? I know, like, Deep Purple and Zeppelin were the only two bands to have their own private jet. We
had what's called the Starship. They made two of them. There was two Starships built. They took two 707s and just gutted them. Actually, we used the same one that Zeppelin used, because when we got it, when Deep Purple got it, because we were using it too, it still had Led Zeppelin on the side of the plane.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, it was that was crazy. It was called the Starship. It was, like I said, it was a 707. They had gutted it and just instead of having, chairs and, seating, it was just like a tour bus inside. So you walked up the stairs, and then along both sides of the plane was a built-in, like, burgundy leather sofas all the way down. There was a bar built in. There was a piano bar, that had us a bartender, and we got, some really hot stewardesses and whatnot, and they served, they served meals on it, and there was 2 bedrooms in the back. There was one big bedroom with a, jacuzzi tub and all that, and then there was a smaller bedroom, and then there was a bathroom, of course. So, yeah, it was insane. That plane was unbelievable.
So did you do any gigs with Richie, with that new radio?
Oh, yeah, we got back on track. So at the end of the summer, we were rehearsing, and things weren't going good. He was yelling, he was throwing his guitar down and, just walking off. He didn't like the rhythm section. He was trying to get Gary to play more straighter, and Gary played a lot like, John Bonham. He was just one of those power drummers that played a lot of fills and did a lot of bass drum fills and whatnot. And I played along with him. So we were our rhythm section was too busy. I mean, absolutely too busy. We were playing too many notes, and that didn't work out. So they fired Gary, and he went back to New York, and then they brought in Carmine Appice. So we had Carmine Appice for about 2 weeks, and that didn't work out either. Carmine's a phenomenal drummer, but it just didn't work. It just didn't lock. And then I was next to go, so it was like, well, we're going to have a little chat here, Craig.
So you went and they still had Carmine, or what? Was he still there?
No. The whole rhythm section, everything was gone. They had fired Gary first, the drummer, and he was really upset and pissed, and so he left and flew back to New York. And I was still in the band, and we were trying to work it out, and it just wasn't locking in. So, Mickie Lee, the keyboard player, and Ronnie were getting into it, and it was just, we all knew it was happening. It was just time. Mickie Lee said, if Gary's gone, then, blanket. I know I'll be next. I know Craig's gone, so, I guess it's just you and Richie, Ronnie, so have at it. So all of us left. I think it was in October of 75. I still had a house out there in Malibu. I was out of the band, but I still lived in the same house. And then they brought Jimmy in. Jimmy Bain flew in.
So what was the connection with Jimmy?
Richie had flown back to England while all this was going on, because we stopped rehearsing after Carmine didn't work out. So Richie went back to England. I thought on business for whatever reasons, and it wasn't made clear to me, so I didn't really care at that point. I didn't know what was going on. So, but I guess apparently he had seen Jimmy play live somewhere while he was there, or he had heard about him. And Jimmy's a really, really solid bass player. Jimmy's very good, very straightforward and all that. So a couple weeks later, Richie came back, and about a week later, Jimmy followed him, and they brought him into the house, and I met him and shook hands with him and said, hey, what's up? And within about 2 weeks, they had brought Cozy in. So this was like November of 75, and I was still staying there. And I started looking for some other work. I had a few dollars. I was okay money-wise, so I just took the rest of the year off. Then I went to work at the record plant. But that's how that whole thing ended. It was really weird. It was pretty sad, actually, because we had all been together for so many years, with Ronnie and everything, and it just
was Bruce Payne involved then as a manager?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So who told you? Who sacked you? Was it Bruce or was it Richie or what?
Actually, it was Ronnie. Ronnie and Colin Hart. Colin was our manager.
Colin Hart,
road manager.
Wasn't he?
Sweetheart. Oh, definitely loved him to death, man. What a great, great, great guy. Yeah, he went through all the hell with Purple for years, and he was Richie's personal for a long time too. And you know what that involved.
Yeah, I do.
Just, insanity. But God bless him, and
Did you
I don't think Richie ever fired anybody, including girlfriends. I think he got Bruce to do that too.
Yeah, it was. Everybody got their walking papers, and I knew it wasn't gonna gel because it just wasn't the same. I mean, we were being told exactly what to play, and I just said, F it. Why don't you go get Roger Glover? I mean, Roger's not playing. I mean, I didn't even care at that point. It was just the brain damage wasn't worth it. I said, Roger's definitely your man. He's technically incredible, and he's a great guy. Oh, my God, what a great guy. And he's a producer. I said, it probably behoove you.
Now, Craig, we're going to get into Bob in just a minute because we're leading up to when Bob joins Rainbow.
Yeah.
Now, Craig, you were in, you actually got called back, though, just before Bob rejoined, right? Because Jimmy Bain was out after, the Rising record. And then who did they get? They got Mark, someone?
Mark Clark. Yeah, they brought in Mark Clark. Yeah, I went back for about 3 months, and after they fired Mark, and I don't know, I didn't hear, all I heard about him was, I never met him, and I've always admired him.
Wasn't he?
Yeah, he played with Tempest, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
remember that band.
yeah. I always admired his playing. I always thought he was great, and but it's just too many notes, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah,
Probably a
it's strange that they would get
personality
him
thing
in.
as well, because especially with Richie, if there were any personality clashes, then you don't have to leave if you can't stay here.
You could have been Stanley Clark. It didn't matter. I mean, I remember playing a lot of thumb parts because I grew up listening to Motown. I'm a black bassist. I don't know. Everybody thought, I don't know. I'm just a Motown player. Blues and Motown is what I grew up on. I don't know. Then I just turned it up, played a little louder, and kind of connected the dots, and and I developed my own style. But I was playing the second time I went back when they brought me back. I was just playing some thumb things and just some funk parts, and literally
Richie would hate that. Richie would hate that. That's
the guitar.
That's why he left Deep Purple, because of Glenn Hughes getting into Stevie Wonder.
Absolutely.
So that was more on that Ronnie's doing. He just wanted to get like old friends back in. That's why he kept calling you back. You think, Craig?
Yeah, he said, yeah, it'd be great to have a friend in the band. I mean, Colin called me, in New York, because I had gone back to New York. And Colin called me. I don't even know how he got my number, but anyway, he called me and says, Jimmy's gone. There's been a shake-up in the band, and Ronnie asked me to call you and ask if you'd be interested in coming back out and having a blow. And I went, oh man, part of me said yes, the other side said no.
Obviously, they said yes for a while, but how long did you stay, and what happened?
It started in again. I mean, it was the same mess. I mean, it just too many notes. Just my style doesn't gel with them. I can't play with. If you're gonna tell me what to play, then I don't need to be in the band.
Yeah. So Bob, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Craig. Finish up.
But anyway, yeah, it lasted about 3 months, and then I got my walking papers again. Colin said it isn't working, and Ronnie came to me and said, this I'm leaving too. This is this is a nightmare. And I said, y'all need to leave. This is the biggest pile of shit I've ever heard. I mean, we got an incredible album. We got incredible music. We have an incredible sound. We actually carved something out that's I think is very special. But it's a bad marriage. It's just ain't gonna work. So no problem. I said, pay me what you owe me, what we decided on, and I'll leave. No problem. And then I went back to the record plant. Boom, stayed there for 2 years more, and then Ronnie called me again to do the Sabbath thing. But that's when Bob jumps in then, right?
Yeah, Bob.
Yeah, that would have
How did
been.
you hook up with Rainbow?
Well, I was on a tour of America with a band called Widowmaker, which was on Jet Records. Towards the end of the tour, I think we just had a few shows to do. It would have been about August 77, maybe end of July, somewhere around there. And I went to see a friend of mine. I'd been in a band in England with Dick Middleton. He was the guitarist in Mungo Jerry. And he was a friend of Richie Blackmore. He was a friend of Richie's, and
You had a friend? Wow.
I went to see Dick Middleton at his house with his family and that in L.A., not far from the hotel I was staying in. And he told me he said, Richie's got this new band, Rainbow. He said that I know they've been auditioning lots and lots of bass players in L.A. He said, would you be interested? He said, they haven't found anybody they like yet. So I said, well, because the thing with Widowmaker with me, it was, I liked the guys, I liked the music, it was doing okay, but they used to get a bit out of hand, with drink and drugs, and they'd start squabbling, and it just got a bit unprofessional sometimes, and it kind of pissed me off. So because I wasn't, absolutely 100% satisfied in Widowmaker, I thought to myself, well, at least I'll look in and give it a whirl. So the first thing we did was really to see if Richie and I would get on, if he liked me, because Dick told me that he said if he doesn't like you, he won't even bother auditioning you. It doesn't matter how good you play. So Dick Middleton, Richie, and I went out for a beer and a laugh, and it got on fine. And that was that night. Richie said to me, "Come down, have a play, see what happens." So I went down to their went down to their rehearsals, and I'd done a gig. I flew up to San Francisco, did a gig with Widowmaker the night before, came back really late, and then went to the audition the next day. I was a bit tired, but I was sort of, hyped up enough, ready for it to at least give it a whirl. And I went along to the place they were rehearsing, did the audition. Richie really put me through the paces personally himself, he likes the really precise 8s and 16s, and he wanted somebody to play with, using a pick. And I seemed to be everything they wanted. So Richie and Cozy and Ronnie went off into a little office somewhere after my audition, and they came back out and they said, well, you've got the gig if you want it. And the funny thing is, I said, well, I'll think about it. Which, people, well, only because I was a little apprehensive.
By the way, what kind of money are we talking about? You know what I'm saying?
I didn't even mention that. It was, it was just like, do I want to do it or not? I was a bit sort of apprehensive because I'd been, some people really encouraged it and said, oh, that'd be a great opportunity. That's a big band, big names. They're going places. You'd be doing arenas and then other people were saying to me, well, just be careful because you could be out on your ear in 3 months. Richie's got a reputation of chewing people up and spitting them out, and you could be out on your ear in 3 months without a gig or an income or a band or whatever, So I really had to think about it for at least a couple of days. And I phoned my wife in London, and she had a long, I remember her, she had a long talk to me. She said, God, are you out of your mind? You've got to do it. It's too much of a good opportunity.
Oh, cool.
It'll last. Have confidence in yourself and all that. So I still hadn't, really decided. And with the last gig that Widowmaker had to do was at the Whiskey, just down from the Rainbow on Sunset Boulevard.
Yeah.
And Richie and Cozy came. And after the gig, Richie said to me, look, we're going to go up to the Rainbow now. Come up. So I said, yeah, all right, I'll come up and have a drink with you. Now, he thought that I'd already said, yes, I'm going to join. I'm in the band. Consider me, in. But I hadn't. Within myself, I hadn't made that decision. But after we came off stage, the Widowmaker guys, another squabble broke out, and there was all this yelling and fighting and swearing, and I thought, oh, fuck this. And I said to them, look, I see you, I'm going up to the Rainbow. And that meant I'm going up to the Rainbow, and it also meant I'm going up to the Rainbow. So, so I walked in, and it was reasonably early, so it wasn't really busy. And I walked in, and Richie had a table there. He was sat there, I think, with his girlfriend then Sue, as far as I can remember. I can't remember if he even had anyone with him. But I walked in, and as I walked in, he stood up and clapped. And I thought, wow, obviously likes what I did. And then I sat down, and I don't think I actually even said to him, count me in, or yes, I'm in, or whatever. I just sort of went along with him thinking that I was in, and I started rehearsals the next day.
That's awesome.
And I was still kind of in Widowmaker because I think we had 1 or 2 more shows to do before the actual end of the tour, and I'd started rehearsals with the band with Cozy, Ronnie, and Richie, and a new keyboard player called David Stone. He was from Canada, from Toronto. With Don Arden got wind of me rehearsing with Richie, and he got me into his office, and he gave me a severe talking to, which I could understand at the time because I was still on the Widowmaker payroll doing gigs with them. And Don Arden said to me, I don't pay you to be rehearsing with Richie Blackmore. And so then I really had to cut it off then. I told the Widowmaker guys, I said, look, I've been offered this Rainbow thing, and I'm going to take it. And count me out, that's it. I did the couple of shows we had to do, and that was the end of it. They went home, I was out, and I stayed behind in L.A. rehearsing with the band every day for a few weeks.
Now, did you know Ronnie James at that time?
No.
Were you familiar with
Rainbow's I probably met Ronnie with Elf, because in I think it was 74. It was either 74 or 75. I was working with Stan Webb with Chicken Shack in England, and we were on the bill with Deep Purple around Europe, Germany, and all around there.
That's when I met you the first time.
Yeah, and so I didn't remember that much about it, but I remember Elf being on the bill, and it was Stan Webb.
Yeah, I remember Stan Webb was pissed as a rat.
Yeah, and Robbie Blunt was the other guitarist. Robbie Blunt was, he ended up playing with Robert Plant when Zeppelin broke up.
Wow.
Yeah, it was Stan Webb, me, Robbie Blunt, and a drummer called Bob Clouter. But I didn't really remember much about any of the Elf guys or anything. It was, it was a bit of a blur. But
it was a quick meeting. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
We just went backstage and hung out. We had a few beers. You were pretty iced up. I was iced up. We were having a good time, and I remember laughing our butts off. I know that. Then we went out. I think we went to a club or somewhere.
Possibly, yeah.
It's a blur.
I remember when I did join Rainbow, I think I got on very well with Cozy. We hit it off really well because he was staying at the Sunset Marquee, and so was I. And I used to travel to and from rehearsals every day with him in his Corvette, And,
yeah, he was cool, man. He's a great drummer.
Yeah, great drummer, nice bloke, and we got on really well together. But the person in the band that sort of took me under his wing, me being the new kid, was Ronnie. You know, he was, which helped to make it, you know, a more comfortable situation because, you know, it was the first really big band I'd been in, and Ronnie was very nice, very hospitable, very, you know, comforting to be around, and you know, funny bloke too. A great sense of humor, for an American, a very English sense of humor, if you know what I mean.
Right.
Yeah.
He was always, he was very into the English comedies and that, you know, and you know, very into Python. So was Richie, and Cozy was. Cozy would sit there and recite a whole Python sketch, word for word, you know.
Exactly.
Ronnie really seemed to vibe with the bass players that he's worked with. I know, you know, in Black Sabbath, Geezer was his closest friend, and of course, in Rainbow, I know both you, Bob, and Craig, you guys were very close with Ronnie. And the second lineup of Rainbow, I know Jimmy was one of his closest friends in the band. I don't know if it's because he played bass, but he really did seem to click with the bass players that he's.
Yeah, possibly. It was maybe because he played bass, but he also did he play any other instrument other than bass and trumpet?
No, a little bit of piano, not much, but enough to play chords and you know, work out some parts.
Get some ideas going on it, yeah. Maybe it was the fact that he used to play bass.
He used to write on an acoustic guitar with us, you know.
I don't really remember seeing him play acoustic guitar. I'm sure he did, but maybe he just...
I mean, he just knew, you know, he'd find the bass part and then he'd make a chord out of it, you know what I mean? Ronnie would, write the melody and he'd have a few, you know, words put together, a small chord structure, and then we would go from there, but he would, just find the notes on the bass strings, and then if he was on an A or a D or a G, he'd play the chord, and but he knitted things together with an acoustic guitar. It's pretty cool.
Now, Bob, I know you were on the Long Live Rock and Roll album. Were you? Were you actually involved during the whole writing process of that album, or?
No, not really. The only song that came together from scratch when I was in the band was Gates of Babylon.
One of my favorites.
And we all did that together at Le Chateau in France, where most of the album had been recorded. But see, in between bass players, they carried on recording, and Richie played bass on some of the tracks. There was one track that didn't have bass on it at all, and a couple of tracks Richie had already played bass on, and I played on Gates of Babylon, which I thought was the best track on the album anyway, and Kill the King. That was
great song.
Track, and I played that live for a while because that was already in the set before it was even released as a studio track. So
how long did you tour with Rainbow, Bob?
How long?
Yeah.
Oh, fucking forever.
Because it seemed like it was up until they got Graham Bonnet in the band, right? So it was
that's right.
Through 78.
It was. I think the tour. I joined in early August '77, and then we rehearsed through August. September we started. We went back to London and did the full-on production rehearsals, and then went on the road in Scandinavia. Did all the. Originally, the first gig was meant to be in Helsinki in Finland. And I think something happened with the gear, or the trucks didn't make it, or something happened. And the actual first show was in Stockholm in Sweden. And we did Scandinavia all around there, and then all around Europe, which is where that show was filmed in...
Germany, right?
I've
got a copy of that on DVD. Great concert.
Yeah, in Munich. It's called Rainbow Live Munich 77 or something. So I'd been in the band then about... I don't know, a month or 6 weeks or something, so...
Now, I know you and Ronnie obviously were close because I know when Ronnie, after he left Black Sabbath and formed his solo band, I believe you were called before Jimmy Bain. You were one of the first people called. Is that correct, Bob?
That is correct, yeah. He and Vinny Appice showed up at my place in London and asked me if I'd be interested in getting things together, but I was already doing stuff, and I was happy doing what I was doing. Plus, I felt a little bit let down by Ronnie when Rainbow broke up, because during the American tour, we toured a lot around America and Canada and that in '78, and we started the year off in Japan as well. Most bands at the time would go to Japan for 10 days or 2 weeks maybe, but we were there for 3.5 weeks. We did, every place in Japan. But the band, I think the album was #1 there at the time, Long Live Rock and Roll. So, we were riding on the crest of a wave. But yeah, and then we went to America, and the American tour went on and on and on and on. Towards the end of the tour, I remember Ronnie pulling me aside and saying, look, if the band folds or if this doesn't work out, would you be interested in getting a band together with me? And I thought, well, obviously he knows something or senses something that I don't, because I hadn't sensed anything. Everything seemed all right, but he either got wind of something or caught vibes or, whatever it was, and had made some, just speculative plans, about putting a band together himself. And as it turned out, by towards the end of that year, it just sort of fizzled out. It wasn't like, everybody's fired or that's the end of it or whatever. I was back in London waiting to see what was going to happen next. I just thought, well, we're having a break because we've done a lot of touring. We're having a rest, But everybody had been, everybody gone, So I got the phone call from Ronnie then, which confirmed it. And he said, yes, it is. Cozy's the only one that stayed, but even he was got his marching orders. Not long after that, Richie started putting together his new version of Rainbow. But Ronnie phoned me at my apartment in London. He said, I'm looking for guitarists. I'm looking at record companies. Just hang in there. I'm just doing some, preparatory work, and I'll be in touch. And every couple of weeks he'd phone me, and then so I was just sort of relaxing, really. I thought, well, if I'm going to do that with Ronnie, I'll stay on that one and concentrate on that one. I didn't really look for anything else. But then one day I walked up the street and bought was either New Musical Express or Melody Maker or one of those music papers, and on the front was Ronnie James Dio joins Black Sabbath. And I thought, oh dear. I couldn't blame him. It was such a great opportunity. But I would have liked to have heard it from Ronnie himself, I just wished at the time that he'd phone me and say, well, I've been offered this, I can't turn it down, so I'm going to do it. But he didn't say anything, so I just found out through the papers. But apparently at the time, it was, of all people who should advise Black Sabbath to fire Ozzy and get Ronnie Dio in, it was Sharon.
I heard.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's unreal. I never knew that.
Well, as it turned out, it was it was all meant to happen. He joined Sabbath and I joined Ozzy. So
yeah, that was musical chairs. I had so many questions about that on the road for years too. Because it's funny because you played with Rainbow, you played with Sabbath, you played with Gary Moore. I played with Rainbow, I played with Sabbath, I played with Gary Moore. I mean, every band I've ever played with, you've played with. It's like It's unreal. It's pretty cool. I remember seeing you with Ozzy. We did the Monsters of Rock World Tours, and I watched you from the side of the stage. And you're.
Oh, was that with Jakey Lee then? Was it?
Yeah. I was Jakey Lee. It was. Right. You're one of the greatest bassists, Bob, of any bassist ever in metal or in rock. You are. You are such an incredible performer. You're so dynamic live, and you have such a great sound. And your stage presence is incredible. I was just blown away. And
thanks.
Very honored to work
especially
with
from
you.
another bass player. When was the last time you saw Ronnie, Craig?
Let's see. We were doing, I was with Gary Moore, and we were doing the Monsters of Rock World Tours. We were in Germany.
Oh, that's the last time you saw Ronnie?
That's the last time I saw him personally.
Wow, that's a long time ago then.
Yeah, in person. I haven't seen him for years and years and years.
I hadn't seen him for many years, but I saw him here in Sydney a couple of years ago when the Heaven and Hell thing came here. And I went to the show and hooked up with him after the show, just went backstage and said hello. And it was nice to see Ronnie, and he was exactly the same. He was nice, he was hospitable, he was, his glass of vodka and tonic in his hand, and he was, same old Ronnie. He was, he looked more or less the same as he, a little bit older, obviously, but, same old Ronnie. Sang like a bird all night, little bloke comes out on the stage and blows everybody away with a voice bigger than life,
I mean, one of the things that always amazed me is, because our schedules are, you play 150 nights a year, there's 360 days in a year, obviously, but that means you play every other day. That means you play a different city every other day. To play 150 nights a year, you're playing every other day. And you know what the grind is. I mean, we did a world tour with Gary Moore. We played 5 nights a week. That's 5 countries a week. You know what it's like, Bob. But Ronnie, even when we were absolutely decked literally so tired we could barely move. Ronnie still always took time for the fans, always. Never
I know
failed.
that,
I mean,
yeah.
there's always, even when we were walking out to the bus, after the show, people we should be running around, stirring around behind backstage and in the Coliseum areas. They brought Elf albums, you know what I mean? And,
Well, we used to actually make jokes. In Rainbow, we used to make jokes about Ronnie because he was, he would always make sure anybody that wanted an autograph got one, that everybody was happy, and we'd be maybe sitting in the car and Cozy would say something like, well, where's Ronnie? And then Richie would say, oh, he's out there making a cup of tea for the bloke who's sweeping the hall or something. But,
it's funny you say that. I was talking to my good friend of mine, Mike Stone, and he played guitar in the band Queensryche. No, this
Mike
is
Stone.
Mike Stone from Queensryche. He was a guitar player for about 12 years.
Yeah.
And he had Queensryche had opened for Heaven and Hell, and Mike Stone was telling me that every show they would play, Ronnie would go to every employee that worked for the venue, the security guards, everything. Can I get you anything? Can I get you some water? And would
see, there you go. It wasn't such a joke after all, saying he's made a cup of tea for the bloke who swept the hall. It probably really was.
No, he absolutely did. He said he would go to the security guards and he would offer them food, like the band's dinner.
He did. I remember that.
If the security guard would say something like, oh, I can't leave my post, Ronnie would go to the buffet, make a plate of food, and bring it out to the security guard.
Bring it out on a silver platter for him at a wine list.
Exactly. I mean, what other musician would do that?
No, I know. He was always like that, though. Really, he was a really nice bloke. And the other thing about Ronnie, I mean, most singers, if you're doing grueling tours, they tend to need, maybe do 2 nights at the most 3 and have a night off for their voice. But Ronnie could sing and sing and sing. He'd do 4 nights straight and not feel it. It's most other singers I've ever worked with that need that night off after 2 or 3.
Especially after working with Ozzy.
Yeah, well, I mean, Ozzy never ever looked after his voice anyway, so...
No, it is unbelievable. And from a fan's point of view, I mean, I've seen, Dio countless times with Black Sabbath and solo and with Heaven and Hell, and every time, absolute perfection. Never a flaw.
Oh, always. Never sang sharp, never sang flat. He was always spot on, good phrasing, perfect pitch. Very, very good. And I thought it was abysmal that they had to go out and call themselves Heaven and Hell because of the other pair.
I know.
That was really wrong, Fucking hell, what do they want it all?
Yeah.
Well, the answer to that is yes.
Was there anything in particular you wanted to say about Ronnie? Maybe any stories or any great memories, touring-wise, or just hanging out, partying at the Rainbow or anything?
Well, Ronnie didn't come into town that much and hang out at the Rainbow. That was more Richie, because Ronnie lived out of town a little bit, and Richie was up in the Hollywood Hills, so he would come down, and he liked going to the Rainbow. So socializing, it was more with Richie and Cozy for me. Although on the road, Ronnie and I hung out a lot together. He was a really likable chap, easy to be around, easy to get on with. And so I went out with him, and he had Wendy on the road with him all the time because she was his wife and manager, and they were still together as husband and wife then. So, but I hung out a lot with them, and it was always pleasant. It was always nice. Wendy was nice, and they got on well together, and I got on good with them. So it was always enjoyable, and Ronnie, great sense of humour, always a good laugh. And, I always appreciated Ronnie's efforts at making people feel comfortable, which he did, regardless of who it was. He was a nice chap. It really is a shame that he had to go when he did. Yeah. But fortunately, he wasn't a really young man. He lived probably 2 lives in that 67 years. So.
The one thing I always hoped for that there would be a Rainbow reunion. I was always hoping, and up until the point.
Well, it nearly happened. Let me tell you, there was some stuff going on.
Just before Cozy passed, right?
Cozy and I started talking about it in about 96 or 97. And apparently it was either Ronnie or Cozy had spoken to Richie about it as well. And they got the green light from Richie. So it wasn't definite, oh yes, we're definitely going to do it, but it was all speculative at the time that, well, it looks like it could happen, I don't know who the keyboard player would have been. That was not really mentioned at the time. But at that point, it was me, Cozy, Ronnie, and Richie were talking along the lines of doing some shows and possible another album or whatever. But right when it began to get serious, Cozy got killed, and that put the mockers on that. It was the end of it.
We'll talk about your current projects, to end this off. But before we get into that, was there anything you guys wanted to add about Ronnie? Or
in some ways, I wish I'd kept. I mean, everybody says this when somebody dies, that if they haven't been in touch with them often enough. I wish I'd been a bit more in touch with him. But the last time I worked with Ronnie was 1998. I got a call and talked to Wendy, and then went to LA and rehearsed with his band Dio, and did a Scandinavian tour because the bass player he had at the time had either other commitments or there was a sickness problem or some personal issues or something. I don't remember the reasons he couldn't do the tour, but he couldn't, so I just filled in and I went and rehearsed with the band in LA for a few days, and then they went across to London, did a show there. That was the last show that bass player did with them, and he had to go back and do whatever he had to do. And then I took over from there, and we went to Scandinavia the next day, and we did a Scandinavian tour for 3 weeks. And I think that was about October 98, and that was the last time I worked with Ronnie. But I did actually see him a couple of years ago. The Heaven and Hell thing came here to Sydney, and that was the last time I saw him. I went to that, saw the show, went back to see them to say hello after it, and saw Ronnie and gave him a hug, and he had his vodka and tonic in his hand, and he was same old Ronnie. It was really nice. But especially after he was diagnosed, I would love to have talked to him. But I suppose me and hundreds of others, well wishers But I just left it alone because I knew Wendy was just inundated with people sending cards and emails, and I thought, I don't need to add to that. So she had her hands full, but it would have been nice to talk to Ronnie. But, all the times that I did deal with Ronnie, working-wise, socially, whatever, it was always pleasurable. And at least he went out on a good note of still being up there, still doing it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Craig?
Yeah, I'd like to just kind of add to it, the same kind of along the same lines as Bob, has just mentioned it. I mean, Ronnie was like a diplomat, if you will. I mean, I don't care what the situation was, within the band, with differences in ideas and musical ideas and direction-wise. I mean, Ronnie always kept it under control, and that's very difficult, with Richie. And I'm not saying anything, derogatory against anyone in the music industry. God bless them, everyone. I'm sincere about that, and I'm very honored to be, working with those guys through all that time period. But Ronnie was really like a family member. I mean, that's how close he was to all of us through all those years. Because, when Elf started out, we were so lucky to be picked up by Deep Purple. We were managed by Bruce Payne, ATI, Atlantic Talent, out of New York, and Bruce had connections and somehow got Deep Purple. I really don't know a story on that, really, after all these years, how he had managed to, exclusively book Deep Purple across North America and the world. But that's how Elf actually got into that situation. But, through the years, I mean, we came up really with nothing. I mean, we used to, like, Purple would get done playing, like the curfew was 11 o'clock, and, we were in Elf. We only played 40 minutes, so we'd open up the show, play our 40-minute set, run backstage, take a shower, get in the car, and drive all night to the next gig. We were there to open up. Yeah, I mean, it would be a 700-mile gig, I mean, we, from between Chicago and Detroit, and all those cities, those big cities are about 700 miles apart in America, and you can do it overnight. So we did that. I mean, we shared driving, and, we rented a new station wagon, and we destroyed it. But, it was very humble, very, very humble in the beginning. And, Ronnie would drive, like, get off the stage and, and drive all night. I mean, and tell stories, and we'd play, cassettes all night long in the car and pull in and, those little truck stops and, buy a $17 apple and,
I'm running out of time, so I'm going to go in about 5 minutes. So
Okay, well, let's close up. Bob, I know you've got, last time we talked, you got your upcoming book. How's the progress on the book coming?
well, the first draft, I've got to add just a couple of anecdotes and a little prelude to the end, but the meat and potatoes of it has been done, and I'm rereading through it now, doing little changes and corrections and, the sort of editing part. And I'm doing it all myself. I haven't, had anybody to help me write it or ghostwrite it for me or co-write it with me. I'm doing it all myself because, well, I kept diaries since 1976. And before that, I've got lots of, in those days, when people didn't have mobile phones with texting each other and emails or even faxes for that matter. It was people used to write letters to each other, So I'd get letters to and from other people. So I've got a whole load of those as well that I went through that reminded me of things that happened and when they happened. And then from then on, from '76, I kept a diary. So I've got a record of all the dates of what happened and who was involved and how it happened, and plus I've been fortunately, blessed with a very good memory. I've got a good memory of for most of the stuff that went on and how things happened and that, and plus I took a lot of photographs. So it'll be an interesting book to say the least, because it's there's some really funny stories in there, but there's also tragedy and sadness and personal friends that people will relate to. Obviously the obvious ones like, Randy Rhoads and Bon Scott and people like that. But there's some really funny stuff in there as well. Sometimes I'm sitting there typing away and I'm just laughing out loud as I'm doing it because I'm remembering the whole thing of what happened.
Your mind starts to reel. You get right back to the same moment when it happened.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And other times I've been sitting there writing and just in tears, because it's... to write it properly and get it down, you've got to relive it. So I suppose all in all, it must be in some way therapeutic as well for the person writing it. To write your life story and all the major events anyway. It's only really from a musical standpoint. The beginning of it is it does go into bits of my childhood and my school life, but that's what molded me into the musical life that I ended up in. So all that stuff's in there as well.
That's cool. I can't wait to read it. I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, is there a release date yet that you're kind of looking at, Bob?
No, I've got to wait until I say, yes, that's it, it's finished. Now I've got an agent in London, they specialise in finding the right publisher for the type of book it'll be. So hopefully later this year. I've made good progress. I started February last year, so I've been at it just over 15 months.
So I understand that I just read recently that Ozzy and Sharon, they're reissuing the original recordings of the first two Blizzard of Oz records for a 30-year anniversary.
That's
so
what I hear. Yeah, I thought it would have to. Yeah, I thought it would have to happen sooner or later because. Absolutely. When it was first done, I think they thought they'd get away with it and just nobody would give a fuck, because it was all Ozzy, Randy, Ozzy, Randy, Ozzy, Randy. It was, but the real fans and the real people that appreciate music were just, devastated at having those two records ruined like that. And I think it made, apparently there's a Sharon Osbourne hate club now, and where people, it's like a website, so. But, I don't think Sharon's totally to blame. I don't think Ozzy's blameless, He would have had to go along with it. He would have had to go into the studio and overlook the re-recording of the parts and the mix of the album, and that, because the whole thing was remixed with new people playing on it. And that was not just an insult to us and the record-buying public, but an insult to the memory of Randy Rhoads, because he didn't have a say on who they put his playing with, and it made him sound different as well.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. So I suppose through public demand, and it is the 30th anniversary this year of that first record, so it's appropriate time. It's an appropriate time for them to re-release at least the first one. Maybe Diary next year or something. And
So, Bob, how could people get in touch with you?
Oh, through my website, bobdaisley.com.
Great, and they could
There's a
find out-
MySpace and there's a Facebook and all the usual stuff, so.
Perfect. So you can find out about his upcoming book and anything
Oh,
else
yeah,
you're currently working on. You could just go to bobdaisley.com. Real quick, Craig, why don't you talk about, I know you're also got a book coming out that you've been working on, Stone Cold Crazy. Talk about that briefly.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was approached about a year ago by Weimer Publishing out of London. They do all the Deep Purple and Richie Blackmore stuff, and they've published Purple stuff for 25, 30 years. And anyway, I did an interview about a year ago. I do a lot of these things like we're doing right now. I'm fortunate enough, and again, thank you very, very much. And it's so great to be here and talk with you and Bob.
It's a pleasure
It's
to
great,
have you, man.
but it's great. I really love to see you guys and hang with you and buy you a beer. Anyway, but I did one of these about a year ago, and they got a hold of it, and they said, "Wow, you've got an incredible background." The early, Elf thing with touring with Deep Purple and that transition period of 72, 73, and 74, and then the formation of Rainbow and the first album, and then moving on with Ronnie when he joined Sabbath, and you spent 9 months with them, and then you went on to Gary Moore, and wow, you just got this interesting story. So I started to think about it, and it's like Bob just mentioned a few minutes ago. I mean, the stories and the nights and the parties and the touring, and you just start thinking about it, and there's thousands and thousands of nights of situations and travel and with great friends, and it's a great story. I mean, the story, I can't wait to read Bob's book. I'm really excited about it.
I can't wait to read. I mean, the good thing about both you guys are as Bob had mentioned, and just interviewing the two of you guys got fantastic memory. And unlike so many bands and musicians that whether it be the drugs or whatever, they don't remember much of the past. But you guys have an incredible memory of, from way back from the early 70s onward, so I'm sure it's going to be a fantastic read. Now, Craig, you also have a bass company, right, where you build bass guitars called Infinite Metal Works.
Yeah, I started that 3 years ago. For the last 25 years, I've played every kind of bass like Bob has, you can imagine. And I was endorsed by Hamer, Fender, Ibanez, Schecter, and there's all kinds of stuff out there. And I own an Alembic bass, and I was constantly modifying everything, taking it apart and having somebody put this kind of pickup in it and wire it this way. And there was always something structurally about the bass that I didn't like, I've got short arms. I'm not the tallest guy in the world. I'm like 5'7", 5'8", and my reach is only like about 30 inches. So, I mean, certain basses just don't fit on me. I love Fender basses. I've played them my whole life, but for me, they're just kind of a bulky piece of equipment. They're incredible. They're incredible instruments, but they don't fit me. So, I designed a body that looked nice and fit good, and then I designed the neck. 5-piece laminated, neck through design, and then I designed my own pickups and an overdrive system, and I placed.
Is the overdrive system, is that active or passive?
It's active. It's an active setup and run off a 9-volt battery, 3-band EQ. But I build also passive basses too, if that's what they want. But it's the bodies are all made out of mahogany. Mahogany is a good tone wood for a bass. It's very lightweight too. And then we laminate a piece of exotic wood over the top and the back, and put a nice clear coat on there. And I've got these exotic colors now too. I've got Viper green, Ferrari fly yellow, that Lamborghini purple, and plus I'm in the woods too. I have Coca-Cola, spalted maple. What's that?
I said you'll have to come up with the color dog's dick pink.
Yeah, I'm sure I could whip one up, sure. In dog's dick pink. I think that would go pretty well, in fact. But I've got, Victor Wooten. Victor Wooten saw it and played it and really, really liked it. He's one of the greatest bassists out there. Billy Sheehan is a good friend of mine too, and known him forever. Billy played him and loves him too. It's going really well. So now I've got an endorsement with Kaler. They're the only basses that come right off the shelf with a Kaler bass tremolo setup on them. So you can play all kinds of, wild stuff with them, or just take the bar off it and play it like a normal bass. You can, run the tone controls back. Then you get a very clean, deep, fat funk sound. If you go forward all the way with the knobs, you get like a Jack Bruce kind of a tone, Felix Popularity sound, that kind of thing. That's great for soloing. They're very lightweight. 32-inch scale, medium scales, and they're gorgeous. And it's Infinite Metal Works, and the Works is spelled W-E-R-K-Z, infinitemetalworks.com. Right. And Got a new model coming out June 1st. It's called the Black Mamba. It's a little bit thicker body, a little bit more aggressive sound. Pretty cool looking bass.
Very cool. So fans could actually get in touch with you through that website, right? Infinite Metal
Yeah,
Works?
InfiniteMetalWorks.com. They can reach me on Facebook, too. Craig Gruber, bassist. Infinite Metal Works is also on Facebook and MySpace. And my new website will be up pretty soon, too, probably within 4 weeks, Infinite Metal Works, because I got the new bassist coming out, too. I got to ship Bob one. You got to get one, man. I want to hook you up with one. And
Yeah, I'd like to try out the black one with the overdrive thing, just for...
Yeah, it would be fun for you, man. It's a translucent black, too. It's pretty. You can see through it, translucent black. It'll have blue LEDs up the fingerboard, all blacked out hardware, and really nice. Yeah, I'll get in touch with you, man, and
Okay.
see if we can work something out and get you one over there. And when you come to the States, man, we gotta hang out, too. I'm going to be doing some dates pretty soon, too. I got a tour booked that we're putting together, too. What's called the Chain of Prayer Tour. Right. And we've got bookings here in North America and through Canada. Right now the band is we're going to be I'm going to Los Angeles in 2 weeks. We're going to start rehearsing up. I got, Craig Goldie's on guitar, Ronnie's guitarist. So we got Craig Goldie from Dio on guitar. I got Quiet Riot's drummer, Billy.
Frankie Benali?
Frankie the Man Benali. Frankie's playing drums. I got Jeff Fenholt. He was in Sabbath for a few months back in the 80s. And his real claim to fame is he was the original singer in Jesus Christ Superstar on Broadway for 3 years, and he's got a great voice. Sounds kind of a lot like, I don't know, if you put Robert Plant and Ian Gillan in a drum and mixed them up. It's
right.
He's got some like a Dave Coverdale soul to it too. So
and he was in your band Bible Black too, right?
Yeah, Jeff was with me for 3 years in Bible Black. Yep, he's a great guy, great singer, amazing singer. So we're gonna go out and play some. Rainbow, some Sabbath songs. We're going to do, some Dio stuff because of Craig Goldie and his affiliation with Ronnie. And mainly the tour is basically to raise funds for the St. Jude's Children's Cancer Research Hospital in New York City and also Sick Kids Foundation. And we're going out and as a tribute to Ronnie, of course. So we're looking forward to going out and play some gigs for the next 6 months or so.
Absolutely, a great cause.
So that's
Definitely
what I'm
check
doing.
that out. You'll have the tour dates on your websites and on your Facebook pages, right, for people to come check you out live?
Yeah, we've got a website up now. It's called chainofprayertour.com, and you can go on, and the dates will be put up. And also that website's being redone right now. We just put a basic one up, and our professional one will be finished within 2 weeks also.
All right.
And the dates will be on there and whatnot. But, there's some information right there now, www.chainofprayertour.com. They can check in there.
Very cool. I know our listeners will definitely be interested in that. Well, gentlemen, I appreciate your time and your great stories and your input. Thank you so much. Thanks again for rejoining us on the Skull Sessions. It was a pleasure meeting you for the first time, Craig. So thank you both.
Okay, Bob, you're welcome,
Thank you, Bob.
and we'll talk again soon. And Craig, look after yourself, and we'll be in touch.
God bless you, Bob. And,
All right,
really,
all the best for everyone.
Well, there you go, the great Bob Daisley and Craig Gruber, giving a very fitting tribute, I feel, to the legendary Ronnie James Dio. Many thanks to both Craig and Bob, and be sure to check out their websites for their upcoming books. Sounds like two great reads. Definitely check their website out for all the details of when the books are going to be released, and hope to have both of them back on a future episode. They told some great stories about the old Rainbow and Elf days, stories I had never heard, and it's just always a pleasure, especially when it comes to a band like Rainbow, who have been my all-time favorite band for the past 30 years. The first time I ever heard Rainbow was actually the first time I ever heard Ronnie James Dio. I remember my older cousin, who actually turned me on to heavy metal. I was very fortunate to have an older cousin who turned me on to Zeppelin and Black Sabbath. He used to make me cassettes of old Sabbath and Zeppelin and Deep Purple and Humble Pie and Alice Cooper and 10 Years After and just all these great bands of the early 70s. I was fortunate when I was 9 years old to get these cassettes from him, and I remember one day coming to his house and he was telling me, dude, I've got the greatest album ever, and I'm thinking, what? Is it a brand new Zeppelin album, a brand new Black Sabbath album? Well, what is it? And he goes, no, it's Rainbow. And I'm like, who the hell is Rainbow? And he goes, it's Richie Blackmore from Deep Purple, his new band. And of course, I was about 11 years old. I had never heard of Rainbow, and I had only known of Blackmore through Deep Purple. So went in his bedroom, and he had one of those killer old 70s stereos with those big giant speakers, and he played me the Rainbow Rising album, which had just come out. And I remember he put on side 2, and I heard Stargazer, which went right into A Light in the Black, and I was absolutely floored. That was, at that time, the heaviest, most energetic, most powerful thing I had ever heard in my life, and I was just absolutely blown away by the vocals of Ronnie James Dio. And this is back when I was 11 years old, and still to this day, Rainbow Rising is my all-time favorite album, and Stargazer, my all-time favorite song, with A Light in the Black, followed closely after that. Just what an impact that made on me as a kid. And I just remember from that day on, I was not only in love with Rainbow, but in love with Ronnie James Dio, and of course followed him throughout the years, throughout Black Sabbath. And I was fortunate enough when I started my old fanzine, The Headbanger, back in late 81, 82. And I remember meeting Ronnie James Dio for the first time. It was at the Country Club in Reseda, the old nightclub out in the Valley outside of Los Angeles that always had a lot of great metal shows back in the early 80s. And I remember going to see Alcatraz. It was Yngwie Malmsteen's first show with Alcatraz, and in fact, Alcatraz's debut show at the Country Club. And sitting in the back, I see Ronnie James Dio, and at the time, I was about 17 or 18 at this time, and Ronnie had just left Black Sabbath, and I believe he just put out his new solo record. And I had the balls to go up to him, and I gave him a copy of my fanzine, and I said, Ronnie, you are my all-time favorite vocalist. What will it take to get an interview with you? And he was absolutely the nicest guy I had ever met at that point. And we talked for a while, and he gave me his home phone number. And he said, Bob, you call me anytime, and anytime you like, I'm always here for you to do the interview. And I was blown away and just happy as hell. And I remember going home, couldn't sleep that night. The next day, I call up Ronnie, and he invited me out to the Rainbow. And I had told him that, I was only, I believe I was 17 at the time. I said, I'm only 17. I don't know if I could get in. And he said, well, how about you come over to my house and we'll do the interview? So the following day, I went over to Ronnie's house. This was his old house in Tarzana. It was on Donna Avenue, I remember, and small house, but really, really cool house with a great yard. And went to his house and hung out there for a good 3 hours. In fact, that interview I have posted on the Hard Radio site. If you go to hardradio.com on the main page, at the top right corner, you'll see a Ronnie James Dio interview from 1983. It was done in March of 83. You could actually listen to the audio podcast of that interview. And after the interview, he spent a couple hours breaking out his old photo albums, showing me some incredible pictures of him with Rainbow and Black Sabbath. And I remember he took me through a tour of the house, and he took me through the backyard, and he's showing me like this tree house that he built, where he said that he writes a lot of his music, which I thought, how cool is this? Ronnie James Dio in a tree house. And he showed me his garden, and he's, talking about this. I remember him talking about this tree, that the roots were coming up, and I'm just, it was a surreal moment for me. I'm just like thinking to myself, my biggest idol right here is talking to me about gardening tips. And it was just such a weird and great experience, and an experience I'll never forget. Again, just one of the most gracious, wonderful human beings ever, Ronnie James Dio. And once again, that interview I got posted on the Hard Radio site, so do give it a listen, and I will definitely treasure those memories forever. So, and for any of you listeners out there, particularly a lot of the younger listeners, you might not be familiar with Dio's work with Rainbow. I know a lot of people are primarily familiar with Dio from obviously a solo career and the work he's done with Black Sabbath. But if you're not familiar with the Rainbow albums with Ronnie James Dio, man, do yourself a favor and pick those albums up. Of course, I mentioned Rainbow Rising, which I still today think is the greatest album ever recorded. And also their follow-up, Long Live Rock and Roll, that featured Bob Daisley. What an incredible album. Gates of Babylon, such an amazing song. And let's not forget about the debut record. That was an album that was greatly overlooked, even though it did have probably Rainbow's biggest hit to date, Man on the Silver Mountain. But, I actually got that album later after I got the, Rising and Long Live Rock and Roll. And, although it wasn't as heavy as those albums, an absolute treasure of an album. And, if you want to hear some of the greatest rock ballads ever sung, check out Catch the Rainbow and one of my favorites, Temple of the King. And Dio just sings so beautifully. It's amazing how he could sing so melodic and beautiful, yet be so powerful at the same time. So definitely do yourselves a favor, man. If you're not familiar with Old Rainbow, pick those albums up. And, in closing, I know this is kind of a long podcast here, but I do want to mention something Craig had said, Craig Gruber had said about Ronnie James Dio, about being a diplomat of sorts. And I totally understand what he's saying. As far as I'm concerned, Ronnie James Dio was the heavy metal diplomat. He was the spokesperson for heavy metal music. Not only just an amazing singer and a wonderful human being, but he really did, in my eyes, represent what heavy music was all about. And I think he, in a way, legitimized heavy metal because, as you know, throughout the years, so many artists, without naming too many names, but, you got the Ozzy Osbournes and even the David Lee Roths and people like that supposedly represented this certain style of music as, the sex, drugs, rock and roll kind of thing. Ronnie was always so humble, and he knew how to separate being a rock star on stage and a rock star in person, which in his eyes was just being a normal, humble human being. And that's what I admired most about Ronnie. And now that he's gone, it's a shame for the fact that there really aren't any, quote, heavy metal diplomats left. I mean, of course you got Rob Halford and, people like Alice Cooper, and I'm sure there are others, but I don't think any of these people really are as eloquent and as humble as Ronnie James Dio. And, just like seeing him at the recent Golden Gods Awards, I was there at that show just cringing, as were so many other people, at some of the, well, let's just say corniness of the artists that were up on stage. And then as soon as Dio gets on stage, it's like, thank God. Somebody smart, somebody cool, somebody humble, somebody that could truly represent heavy music. And that's how it was with Ronnie. He was just always, the person to go to if someone would say anything derogatory about heavy metal, about the artists being, stupid and drug addicts and not well spoken and sexist and blah, blah, blah. Ronnie James Dio was always the example to bring up because he definitely was not your stereotypical heavy metal rock star. And that's one thing I wanted to mention here on this podcast, not only being one of the greatest singers of all time and one of the nicest human beings, he really did represent what I feel heavy metal music is all about. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and close this podcast with a great tribute song from a great band and some good friends of mine from Sweden, a band called Fatal Smile. The song is called For the Last in Line, and 100% of the proceeds go to Dio's Stand Up and Shout Cancer Fund. So you could order these songs on iTunes and other music websites. And like I said, it goes for a good cause to the Dio Stand Up and Shout Cancer Fund. So here it is right now, Fatal Smile, For the Last in Line. Thanks again for tuning in to another episode of the Shockwave Skull Sessions. We'll catch you next time.